The meeting room on Concordia Prime was filled with representatives from hundreds of different worlds. Some had scales, others had crystals growing from their bodies, and a few looked like giant birds with colorful feathers. In the middle of all these strange beings sat Ambassador So-Young Lee from Earth. She wore a simple blue uniform and kept a calm smile on her face, even when the alien delegates said rude things about her planet. "The humans want mining rights again," said the Vakrish delegate, his forked tongue flicking out between sharp teeth. "Perhaps they should focus on learning proper civilization first." Several other delegates made sounds that their translators turned into laughter. So-Young's smile never changed. "We appreciate the feedback. Perhaps we could discuss a compromise that benefits all parties involved." Captain Han-Woo Kim watched this exchange from his ship floating in space near the station. The Eternal Olive Branch looked like any other diplomatic vessel. White hull, blue lights, large communication dishes. Nothing about it suggested weapons or danger. That was exactly the point. Han-Woo touched the screen showing So-Young's face as another insult came her way. His jaw muscles were tight. "She's handling it well," said Commander Ji-Woo Park, standing next to him. Ji-Woo had spent 5 years negotiating with dozens of alien species. She knew every trick of galactic diplomacy. She also knew when they were being played for fools. "They're testing us again," Hyun-Woo said quietly. "4th time this month." Woo nodded. She pulled up a data screen showing recent incidents. Human cargo ships delayed at checkpoints for no reason. Colony supply runs mysteriously rerouted through pirate-heavy sectors. Distress calls from human vessels that took hours longer to get responses than calls from other species. Nothing big enough to start a war over. Everything small enough to look like accidents or bureaucracy? Intelligence thinks it's coordinated, Ji-Woo said. The elder races want to see how we react. Han-Woo knew what she meant by elder races. The 5 species that founded the Galactic Assembly 3,000 years ago. They controlled most of the important votes, most of the military power, and most of the good territory. Humanity had joined the Assembly only 73 years ago after first contact. In galactic terms, humans were toddlers at a table of ancient beings. Back on the station, So-Young was presenting Earth's proposal for shared mining operations. She used small words, clear logic, and offered benefits to multiple species. The Shardmind Collective representative, a being made of floating crystals, that hummed when it spoke, interrupted her halfway through. "Your species has been most accommodating since joining us," the crystals hummed. The translator made it sound almost friendly, perhaps too accommodating. "One wonders if humans have any spine at all." Other delegates made their species versions of agreeing sounds. So-Young kept smiling. Inside her jacket pocket, her hand formed a fist so tight her nails cut into her palm. But her face showed nothing except polite interest. "We believe in peaceful solutions," So-Young said. "Violence should always be the last option." Of course," said the Skrell senator, a bird-like creature with silver feathers. "Very noble, very naive." More laughter from the assembly. What none of them knew, what none of them even suspected, was that every human in diplomatic service had the same phrase memorized from their first day of training. Politeness is policy 1. Violence is policy last. There is nothing in between. Those words were written in every handbook, coded into every computer system, and tattooed on the hearts of every human who traveled the stars. Hyun-Woo had those words on a small metal plate bolted to his captain's chair. He looked at it now, reading it for the 1,000th time. He had asked his instructor once what it meant that there was nothing in between. The instructor, an old woman with scars from the Unification Wars, had smiled sadly. "It means we don't do warnings. We don't do escalation. We're either diplomatic or we're done being diplomatic. There's no middle ground with us." The meeting on Concordia Prime ended with the Assembly voting to study Earth's proposal that meant no. It always meant no. So-Young gathered her papers, bowed politely to delegates who barely acknowledged her, and left the chamber with her head high. On Earth, in a deep underground facility, Fleet Admiral Seungmin Bei read the same reports that Hien Wu and Ji Wu had seen. The pattern was clear. Humanity was being pushed, tested, prodded to see where the breaking point was. The elder races thought humans were weak because humans chose to be kind. They thought politeness meant inability to fight. Seungmin looked at the wall of his office. Mounted there was a sword from ancient Korea, over 1,000 years old. Next to it was a gun from the resource wars that had nearly destroyed Earth 2 centuries ago. Above both weapons was a plaque with those same words. Policy 1, policy last. Nothing in between. He opened his computer and looked at files that were marked with the highest security clearance. Plans that had been made the day humanity joined the assembly. Ships that looked like cargo haulers but were something else entirely. Weapons that violated no assembly laws because the assembly had never imagined such weapons could exist. An entire military force hidden in plain sight. Wearing the mask of peaceful exploration. Seungmin hoped they would never need those plans. 73 years of hoping, but hope wasn't strategy. Hope wasn't defense. And the reports on his desk suggested that hope might be running out. Back on the eternal olive branch, Hien Wu received a coded message from Earth Command, just 3 words. Continue monitoring closely. He sent back a confirmation and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were human colonies full of farmers, teachers, children, people who had left Earth looking for new homes and new lives. People who trusted that humanity's diplomats and military would keep them safe. Ji Wu came to stand beside him. Do you think it'll come to it? She asked quietly. Hien Wu didn't need to ask what she meant. I hope not. But if it does? He looked at her. Ji Wu was an excellent negotiator, but she was also a weapons specialist who could take apart and rebuild any gun system in the fleet. Like all humans in space, she was both things at once. Diplomat and warrior, peacemaker and soldier. Polite right up until the moment politeness stopped working. If it does, Hien Wu said, the galaxy is going to learn something about humans that we've been very careful not to teach them. Wu nodded slowly. They both went back to their duties, monitoring communications, tracking ship movements, and smiling politely at alien contacts, being the friendly, harmless humans that everyone expected them to be. Policy 1 was still active. The polite mode was still on. But both of them could feel something building in the dark, like storm clouds gathering on a horizon. Something was coming. Something that would test whether humanity could stay polite forever. And deep down in the part of themselves that remembered Earth's violent history, they both knew the answer. No species could smile through everything, not even humans. Eventually, someone would push too hard. And when that happened, the galaxy would discover what humanity kept carefully locked away behind all that politeness. They would learn that humans weren't naturally peaceful. They had simply chosen peace, and choices could always be unmade. The Taina system had 3 moons orbiting a gas giant. 20 years ago, those moons were just rocks and ice. Then humans arrived. They built domes, planted crops under artificial suns, and turned dead worlds into farms. Now those 3 moons grew enough food to feed 17 neighboring star systems. 40,000 people called Tanis home. Governor Taeyang Choi stood in his office looking at the main agricultural dome. Through the window he could see rows of wheat moving in the artificial wind. Children played in the parks between growing sections. Their laughter reached him even through the glass. This was his home. These were his people. The communication screen on his desk beeped. Taeyang touched it and saw the face of Commander Dong Hyan Song from the defense outpost. Dong Hyan looked worried. Governor, we have a situation. The Assembly just released an emergency bulletin. The Vakresh Dominion is claiming historical ownership of the Tanis system. Taeyang felt his stomach drop. That's impossible. We have all the surveys. This system was empty when we arrived. No structures, no markers, nothing. I know, Dong Hyan said. But they've submitted documents to the Assembly. They're calling for an investigation. The vote is happening right now. Taeyang pulled up the Galactic news feed. He watched as the Assembly voted. One by one, species raised their agreement lights. The elder races voted yes immediately. The middle powers followed. A few smaller species abstained. Not one voted no. The resolution passed. The Taina system would be placed under investigation for 6 months. During that time, human authority was suspended. They planned this, Taeyang said quietly. The documents, the vote, everything. This isn't about historical claims. This is about taking what we built. On Earth, Laoyer Yunjihan was already fighting back through proper channels. She had spent 3 days without sleep, going through every historical database, every ancient star chart, every piece of evidence. The Vakresh claims were fake. She could prove it in any honest court. But the assembly wasn't an honest court. It was politics. And in politics, power mattered more than truth. Yunji submitted her evidence. The assembly acknowledged receipt and scheduled a hearing for 3 months from now. 3 months. More than enough time for whatever the Vakresh were planning. The Vakresh. Warships arrived in the Taina system 4 days after the vote. Not one ship or two. 15 heavy cruisers, each one bristling with weapons. They took positions around all 3 moons. Commander Dong Haiyan watched from his small outpost. He had exactly 1 patrol ship and 40 marines. Against 15 warships, he might as well have rocks and sharp sticks. Governor, I can't stop them, Dong Haiyan said over the secure channel. If they come down, all I can do is file a protest. Then file the protest, Taeyang said. And prepare for whatever comes next. What came next was an ultimatum. The Vakresh commander, a massive reptilian creature named Kresh, appeared on every screen in the colony. His translated words were simple. All humans would be relocated to temporary housing while the investigation proceeded. Anyone who resisted would be arrested for obstruction of assembly justice. Taeyang tried calling the assembly. The response came from a junior administrator who sounded bored. This is standard procedure for territorial disputes. Please cooperate with the investigation team. They're not investigating, Taeyang said. They're taking over. That's your opinion, Governor. The assembly has voted. Follow the law. The law. The law that changed depending on who had power. The law that protected some species and ignored others. Taeyang had believed in that law for 20 years. He had taught his children to respect it. Now he watched as Vakresh soldiers in armor marched through his colony, forcing families out of homes they had built with their own hands. He went to meet Commander Kresh in person. Maybe, he thought, face-to-face they could find some understanding. He found Kresh in the central plaza, directing his troops. The Vakresh commander was even bigger in person, 3 meters tall with scales that looked like black armor. Commander Kresh, I'm Governor Taeyang Choi. Perhaps we can discuss. The blow came fast. Kresh's clawed hand struck Taeyang across the face, sending him to the ground. Blood filled his mouth. Around him, human colonists gasped. Vakresh soldiers laughed. Discuss? Kresh leaned down, his breath hot and smelling of meat. You don't discuss with property. This system belongs to the Dominion now. Your assembly masters have abandoned you. Your diplomats will write complaints. Your politicians will schedule meetings. And by the time they finish talking, these moons will be ours. This is what happens when prey pretends to be predator. Kresh made a gesture. One of his soldiers activated a camera. They were broadcasting this, showing the galaxy what happened to humans who got too comfortable, showing everyone that humanity's politeness was just weakness with better words. Taeyang got to his feet slowly. His face was swelling already, but he looked Kresh in the eye. You're making a mistake? Am I? Kresh gestured at his warships in orbit. I see 15 cruisers. You have 1 patrol boat. I see the assembly's approval. You have paperwork. Where is your mistake? He laughed, and his soldiers laughed with him. Your species is good at farming and apologizing. Stay in those lanes, little human. The video reached Earth in hours. It spread through human networks like fire. Millions watched Governor Taeyang get struck. Millions heard Kresh's words. Millions saw the Vakresh soldiers forcing human families into detention centers. Ambassador So Young Lee was in her quarters on Concordia Prime when she saw it. She watched the video 3 times. Her face stayed calm, but her hands shook. Not with fear, with rage. A rage that had been building for 73 years. A rage that every human diplomat had swallowed down every single time. Some alien species treated them like children or fools. She made 2 calls. One to Earth Command. One to Captain Hyun Woo. Both conversations were short. When she hung up, So Young looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back had smiled through insults for 5 years. Had accepted disrespect with grace. Had believed that patience would win in the end. That woman was done. So Young changed into a fresh uniform. This one was different from her usual diplomatic clothes. It was darker with sharp edges. She pinned her ambassador badge on the collar, but she added something else. A small pin that had been in her desk drawer since the day she arrived at Concordia Prime, a pin she had hoped never to wear. It showed Earth, but not the friendly blue marble everyone knew. This Earth had red continents. The symbol of policy. She walked to the assembly chamber. It was late in the station's cycle, but she had requested an emergency session. The elder races granted it with barely hidden amusement. They expected another human complaint. More polite words about justice and fairness. More requests for investigations and committees, the chamber filled with delegates. They chatted with each other, relaxed. The Shardmine representative even made a humming sound that translated to a joke about strongly worded letters. Several species found this funny. Ambassador So Young Lee entered the chamber. She didn't sit in her usual seat. She walked straight to the central podium, a position usually reserved for the assembly chairperson. Nobody stopped her. They were too surprised. She stood there, silent, until every delegate was quiet. The chamber had not been this silent in decades. So Young looked at them all. The elder races who thought they ruled the galaxy. The middle powers who followed along. The younger species who hoped for scraps of territory and respect. When she spoke, her voice was different. Not angry, not sad, just completely empty of the warmth and friendliness that humans always used. Her translator carried not just words but emotional context. Every species in the chamber felt the change. Like the temperature had dropped, like something dangerous had entered the room. The time for words is over. The Vakresh delegate hissed with laughter. Is this a threat? From humanity? The species that apologizes when we walk into them? So Young didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the Central Council. For 73 years, humanity has operated under Policy 1. Politeness. We absorbed insults, accepted unfair compromises, and allowed slights to our honor. We chose patience over pride because we believed in the Assembly's mission. She paused. In that pause, something changed in the chamber. Delegates shifted uncomfortably. Their translators were flagging something in human speech patterns. The removal of diplomatic softeners. The absence of uncertainty. The complete disappearance of friendliness. As of this moment, Policy 1 is suspended. We are now operating under Policy Last. So Young's next words were perfectly clear, perfectly calm, perfectly terrifying. The Assembly and all member species are hereby placed in witness mode. You will observe what humanity becomes when we stop choosing to be polite. The Shardmine delegate made a sound like breaking glass. Its translator turned this into words. Witness mode? How dramatic. But what will you actually do? File complaints? Write protest letters? Withdraw from committees? Ambassador So Young didn't answer. She simply touched her communicator. Across the assembly chamber, screens lit up without permission. Every display, every monitor, every holographic projector suddenly showed the same thing. A countdown timer, 72 hours on the Eternal Olive Branch. Captain Hyun Woo received the authorization he had trained for but never expected to use. A single code word from Earth Command. Authorization Crimson. His hands moved across the controls. He had practiced this sequence 10,000 times in simulation. Now he was doing it for real. Good woo, initiate protocol last. All channels, all frequencies. Commander Jiwoo Park's fingers flew across her console. Within seconds, every human vessel in assembly space began broadcasting. Science ships studying distant stars. Colony transports carrying families to new worlds. Even the tiny diplomatic shuttle piloted by Junior Officer Yuna Kang, orbiting a trade station 5 sectors away. All of them showed the same countdown. 72 hours. And beneath the numbers, a message in every known language. Witness mode active. Stand clear. The Skrell senator, his silver feathers ruffling with what his species showed as confusion, addressed So Young. Ambassador Lee, we demand an explanation. What happens when this countdown reaches 0? So Young's response was cold enough to freeze hydrogen. You'll be alive to witness it. That's more courtesy than you showed Governor Taeyang Choi. Back on Earth, in the Deep Command Center, Fleet Admiral Seung-min Bae opened the sealed orders. Orders that had been written 73 years ago, updated every year, and hoped to never be needed. He read them twice, then touched his communicator. All fleet commanders, this is Earth Actual. Authorization Crimson is confirmed. Begin Phase 1 of Protocol last. Repeat, this is not a drill. I say again, this is not a drill. Across human space, things began to change. Cargo ships that had been hauling grain and minerals started reconfiguring. Panels slid away, revealing weapon ports. Engines that had seemed slow and inefficient suddenly showed their true power. What the galaxy thought were simple transport vessels transformed into warships, shipyards that everyone believed made. Colony equipment revealed their real purpose. Construction docks separated, showing fighters and destroyers that had been hidden inside civilian covers. Weapons that looked like communication arrays rotated into firing positions on scientific outposts. Researchers packed away their experiments and activated sensor systems that had been mapping every military base. Every fleet position, every defensive station of every species for 7 decades. Data that had been collected under the excuse of stellar surveys and gravitational studies now revealed its true purpose. Human intelligence knew exactly where every ship, every weapon, every soldier in the galaxy was located. The Assembly's military advisors ran the numbers. Their computers analyzed the new data about human capabilities. Ships that could move faster than anything in known space. Weapons based on principles that violated no assembly laws because nobody had imagined such weapons could exist. Defenses that made attacking human positions a guaranteed disaster. One phrase appeared in every military report, translated into all 847 languages of the Assembly. Threat level revised to extinction class. The Vakresh delegate finally stopped laughing. This is a bluff. Humans don't have this technology. We've seen your ships. We know your capabilities. You've seen what we wanted you to see, So Young said simply. You know what we let you know? In the Taina system, Commander Donghayan Song received new orders from his small outpost. The Vakresh thought they had destroyed his base in a show of force earlier that day. They had bombarded it with enough firepower to turn rock into glass. Donghayan had watched from his real position, 3 kilometers underground in a facility the Vakresh didn't know existed. His outpost wasn't a military base. It was a weapons platform that had been disguised as a military base. The real defenses were buried in the moon's core, built slowly over 20 years, hidden in mining tunnels and agricultural complexes. Now those defenses came online. Targeting computers that could paint a target on a moving ship from 2 million kilometers away. Railguns that could punch through any armor in the Vakresh fleet. Missile systems with yields that made conventional weapons look like fireworks. Donghayan didn't activate them yet. The countdown was still running. But he made sure every Vakresh ship in orbit knew they were being targeted. Weapons locked. Just waiting for the timer to hit 0. Governor Taeyang, still in Vakresh custody, managed to hack into a communication panel. He sent one message to the human colonists hiding in the agricultural tunnels. Stay down. Stay quiet. Our people are coming and they won't be asking permission. In the assembly chamber, panic was starting to replace confusion. The elder races, species that had ruled for 3,000 years, suddenly realized they might not rule much longer. An emergency session was called. Proposals flew back and forth. We should send peacekeepers to intervene before humans attack. We should negotiate new terms immediately. We should prepare defensive positions in case of human aggression. Every proposal died when military computers finished their analysis. The Shardmind Collective, whose crystalline structure let them process data faster than any organic species, went completely silent for the first time in recorded history. Their military AI had run every simulation. In none of them did the galaxy survive a full human military deployment. Not because humans had better technology, though they did. Not because humans had more ships, though apparently they did. But because humans had spent 73 years learning everything about every species while sharing almost nothing about themselves. The countdown entered its final 24 hours. Some species began evacuating their border stations. Others tried to open communication with human colonies, suddenly very interested in being friendly. A few proposed giving Tanis back to humanity immediately. With apologies and compensation, the Vakresh Dominion remained defiant. Commander Kresh sent a message to the Assembly. Humans have been docile prey for 7 decades. This is theater. They will negotiate. They will compromise. They will smile and apologize like they always do. The Dominion does not bow to threats from farmers. Captain Hyun-woo watched this message from his ship. The Eternal Olive Branch no longer looked like a diplomatic vessel. The white hull had shifted to a dark gray that drank light. The blue running lights had turned red. Weapons that had been hidden now stood ready. The communication arrays had reconfigured into targeting systems that could track 1,000 objects at once. Ji-woo stood at the weapons console. She had spent 5 years negotiating peace treaties. She had talked down pirates, mediated trade disputes, and found compromise in conflicts. Now she was checking ammunition loads and power levels. Both roles were equally true. Both were equally her. Diplomat and warrior. Like every human in space. The Vakresh don't understand us, Ji-woo said quietly. No, Hyun-woo agreed. They think politeness is weakness. They think kindness is inability. They think we smile because we can't fight. Should we have shown them earlier? Shown everyone what we could do? Han-woo looked at Earth on his navigation display. That small blue world that had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times before learning to work together. A world that had spent 10,000 years perfecting war before spending 200 years trying to be better than its violent past. We showed them exactly what we wanted them to see. A peaceful species. A kind species. A species that chooses diplomacy. He touched the metal plate on his chair. Policy 1, policy last, nothing in between. We gave them every chance to treat us with respect. Every opportunity to be fair. We absorbed insults and unfair treatment because we believed the Assembly could be what it claimed to be. And now? Now they learn the truth. We're not naturally peaceful. We chose peace. And they just made us choose something else. The countdown hit 12 hours. The Skrell senator made one last attempt at diplomacy. She addressed So Young directly, her silver feathers flat against her body and her species' sign of submission. Ambassador Lee, surely we can negotiate. Return to diplomacy. This isn't who humanity is. So Young's response became famous across the galaxy. The words were recorded, translated, and studied by every species. They were carved into monuments, written in history books, and taught to children as a lesson about assumptions. This is exactly who we are, Senator. We were just being polite. The countdown reached 1 hour. The Vakresh still occupied Tanis. Commander Kresh still had Governor Taeyong in custody. The 15 warships still surrounded the 3 moons. Their weapons aimed at the farms and homes of 40,000 humans. At 59 minutes. Every human vessel in the galaxy broadcast the same message. Not to the Assembly this time. Directed specifically at the Vakresh Dominion. The words were simple. The tone was final. Return our people within 1 solar hour, unharmed. Withdraw from Tanis? This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat. This is a statement of what will happen. You have 59 minutes to make the choice that lets you survive. The countdown wasn't really for the Vakresh. It wasn't even for the assembly. The 72 hours were for humanity itself. Time for every human civilian in potential danger zones to reach safe places. Time for diplomats to evacuate or lock down. Time for children to be moved to shelters. Time for the human military to stop pretending to be something they weren't on Earth. Fleet Admiral Seung-min Bae stood in the command center watching the final preparations. Around him, hundreds of officers worked at their stations. Every screen showed ships moving into position, weapon systems coming online, and soldiers preparing for deployment. This was the force that humanity had built in secret for 73 years, hidden behind smiles and diplomatic courtesy. "Admiral, all civilian evacuations complete," reported a young officer. "All non-combat personnel are secure. Fleet status? Battle Group Terra is ready. Battle Group Pacific is ready. Battle Groups Atlantic, Arctic, and Southern are ready. Colonial defense fleets report ready status." The officer paused. "Sir, we have 417 warships ready for immediate deployment. Another 800 can be mobilized within 6 hours. Seung-min had known the numbers, but hearing them said out loud made it real. Over 1,000 warships, each one more advanced than anything the assembly had. All hidden behind civilian covers, disguised as cargo ships and colony transports. The greatest magic trick humanity had ever pulled. Making a war fleet invisible by pretending to be peaceful. "What about the assembly's monitoring stations?" Seung-min asked. "They're still trying to figure out how we move so many ships without them noticing. Their sensors showed normal cargo traffic right up until we activated protocol last. They don't understand our stealth technology. They wouldn't. Humanity had developed it specifically to fool assembly sensors. 73 years of studying their equipment, learning their blind spots, finding the holes in their detection systems. Every cargo run had been intelligence gathering. Every trade route had been a chance to map their defenses. Every diplomatic mission had hidden military observers taking notes. The assembly thought they knew humanity. They knew nothing. In the Tanis system, the countdown hit 10 minutes. Commander Dong Hyun-song made final checks of his weapon systems. His outpost, supposedly destroyed, was actually more dangerous than the Vakrish could imagine. The 3 moons weren't just farms. They were fortresses disguised as farms. 20 years of preparation, all hidden under wheat fields and water recycling plants. "Commander, we have solid lock on all 15 Vakrish cruisers," his weapons officer reported. "Also tracking their troop carriers, supply ships, and command center on the surface." "Hold position," Dong Hyun ordered. "Wait for the signal." Above the moons, the Vakrish fleet waited too. Commander Kresh was confident. He had 15 heavy cruisers against 1 destroyed outpost and some farmers. Even if humans had hidden some weapons, what could farmers do against military ships? He watched the countdown with amusement. 7 minutes. 6 minutes. 5. "Commander, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the moon surfaces," a Vakresh officer reported. "Probably the humans powering up their communication arrays to beg for mercy," Kresh said. His crew laughed. "Weapons to ready status anyway. Let's give them a show when their timer hits 0. 3 minutes. Captain Hyun-woo's ship, the Eternal Olive Branch, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Tanis system. Behind him came 20 more ships. Then 50. Then 100. The fleet materialized in space like ghosts becoming solid. Ships that the Vakresh had seen before, but not like this. No longer white and blue and friendly. Now dark gray with red lights, weapons deployed, moving in perfect formation. "Fleet is in position," Gawu reported. "All ships report weapons hot and targeting solutions locked." 2 minutes. In the assembly chamber on Concordia Prime, every species watched the displays. Real-time data feeds showed what was happening in Tanis. The humans had broadcast everything openly. They wanted the galaxy to watch. They wanted everyone to witness what happened when humanity stopped being polite. Ambassador So Young stood at the central podium, providing calm commentary like she was narrating a documentary. As you can observe, human military forces have arrived in the Tanis system. Our diplomatic efforts to resolve this situation peacefully were unsuccessful. Therefore, we proceed to policy last. 1 minute, the Skrull senator, her feathers trembling, spoke into the silence. Ambassador, there is still time to stop this. We can negotiate. We can find a peaceful solution. So Young looked at her. We tried peaceful solutions for 73 years. The time for peace was when you had it. You chose violence against our people. Now you witness the consequences. 30 seconds. Commander Kresh finally understood his mistake. His sensors were screaming warnings. More human ships were arriving every second. His computer counted 40, then 60, then 80 warships. All more advanced than his. All targeting his fleet. And those energy readings from the moons weren't communication arrays. They were weapons. Big weapons. Planet-based artillery that made his ship guns look like toys. Commander, we're receiving multiple target locks. Hundreds of them. How are they? Emergency retreat? Kresh shouted. Full power to engines. Get us out of zero. What happened next became known as the 12-minute war. Calling it a war was generous. Wars implied both sides had a chance. The Vakrish never had a chance. They just didn't know it yet. Commander Donghayan's hidden weapons fired first. Electromagnetic pulses swept across the Vakrish fleet like invisible waves. Every Vakrish ship simply stopped. No explosions. No fire. Their systems just died. Engines cut out. Weapons powered down. Life support switched to emergency backup. The 15 mighty warships that had bullied human farmers were suddenly just big metal coffins floating in space. All enemy vessels disabled, Donghayan reported. 0 friendly casualties. 0 enemy casualties. Then the Eternal Olive Branch and its fleet moved in. Not to destroy? To extract. Boarding craft launched from the human ships, small and fast. They attached to Vakrish vessels like metal insects. Human marines cut through airlocks and flooded into the disabled ships. The Vakrish soldiers tried to fight. They were warriors, after all. Proud members of the Dominion military. But fighting humans turned out to be very different from occupying a farm colony. The humans moved like they had practiced this 10,000 times. Perfect coordination. No wasted movement. Every Vakrish soldier who raised a weapon found it torn from their hands by some device that generated focused magnetic fields. Every attempt at resistance ended with Vakrish troops stunned and secured. Ji Woo led the team that hit Commander Kresh's flagship. She moved through the corridors with 20 Marines behind her, clearing each section with practiced efficiency. When she reached the command deck, Kresh was trying to call for reinforcements on a dead communication system. Commander Kresh, Jiwoo said politely. The translator made sure he understood not just her words but her tone. Calm, professional, completely unthreatening. We're here for Governor Taeyang Choi and all human prisoners. You will provide their location immediately. Kresh hissed at her, showing his fangs. The Dominion will send more ships. You cannot. Jiwoo made a small gesture. One of her Marines activated a holographic display showing the space around Tanis. It wasn't just 80 ships. It was 200. 300. Ships kept arriving, filling the system with human military force. The Dominion can send every ship they have, Jiwoo said. We'll disable those too. Or you can tell me where the governor is and we can all finish this without anyone getting hurt. Kresh looked at the display. At the disabled fleet. At the humans who had torn through his defenses in minutes. His military training finally overcame his pride. Detention facility, Moon 2, Sector 7. Thank you for your cooperation. 23 minutes after the countdown hit 0, Governor Taeyang Choi walked free. The bruise on his face was already being treated by a human medic. Around him, all 40,000 colonists were being escorted back to their homes by human marines. Not a single civilian had been hurt. Not a single Vakresh soldier had been killed. Captain Hyan Wu opened a communication channel to Commander Kresh, now secured aboard the Eternal Olive Branch. The Vakresh commander looked smaller somehow, without his weapons and his fleet. "Commander, your crew is unharmed. Your ships are disabled but not destroyed. You will be returned to the Vakresh Dominion with a message. The Tana system is closed to your people for the next 1,000 years. If you try to take it again, we won't be polite the second time." Kresh stared at him. "This was you being polite?" "Yes," Hyan Wu said simply. "This was us being polite." In the assembly chamber, silence had fallen. Every species watched as human forces secured the Tana system with surgical precision. 12 minutes from start to finish? Not a single human casualty? Not a single enemy casualty? Just complete, overwhelming, undeniable victory. Ambassador So Young provided her calm narration. "As you observe, human forces have secured all objectives. Civilian casualties are 0. Enemy casualties are 0. All hostile forces have been secured without lethal force. This concludes our military action in the Tana system." The Shardmind Collective finally spoke, its crystals vibrating with what its species showed as shock. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly started exactly 1 hour after human forces secured the Tana system. Every species had a representative present. Even the ones who rarely attended were there. Nobody wanted to miss this. The galaxy had just watched humanity transform from peaceful diplomats into an unstoppable military force in less than 12 minutes. Now everyone wanted to know what came next. Ambassador So Young stood at the central podium. She looked the same as always, calm, professional, wearing her simple blue uniform. But everyone in the chamber saw the small pin on her collar. The red earth, the symbol of policy last, it was still there, which meant humanity was still in war mode. The chairman of the assembly, an elder Skrell named Vex, spoke first. His silver feathers were completely flat, showing maximum submission. "Ambassador Lee, on behalf of the Assembly, I wish to convey our profound regret regarding the Tana situation. We recognize that errors were made in judgment." Errors in judgment. That was one way to describe watching while the Vakresh took over a human colony. So Young let the words hang in the air for a moment. "Errors," she repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" The Assembly moves to immediately recognize human sovereignty over the Tana system and all human colonies. Vex continued quickly. "All investigations into human territorial claims are hereby terminated. Furthermore, the Assembly proposes formal reparations to compensate for any inconvenience caused." Inconvenience? 40,000 people forced from their homes. A governor beaten on camera. An entire colony occupied by foreign military. Inconvenience. "And what about the Vakresh Dominion?" So Young asked. "The Dominion's representative wishes to speak." A new Vakresh stepped forward. Not Commander Kresh, someone higher ranking with different colored scales. He bowed low, something Vakresh rarely did. "I am High Commander Thesh of the Vakresh Dominion. On behalf of my people, I offer formal apology to humanity. Commander Kresh acted without proper authorization. He has been removed from command and will face consequences. The Dominion accepts all terms presented by humanity and requests peaceful relations going forward." It was a lie, of course. Everyone knew Kresh had been following orders, but it was a lie that let the Vakresh save face while giving humanity what they wanted. Diplomatic theater. So Young understood the game. "The Dominion's apology is acknowledged," he said. "Human forces will withdraw from Vakresh vessels within 24 hours. All personnel will be returned unharmed. However, humanity requires certain guarantees." "Name them," Vex said immediately. So Young pulled up a document. It had been prepared by Yunji Han and a team of human lawyers over the past 72 hours. Every word had been carefully chosen. Every term had been designed to prevent this from ever happening again. First, all human territorial claims filed with the Assembly are to be recognized immediately. with no investigation period unless humans agree to one. Second, any attempt to forcibly relocate human populations requires unanimous assembly vote, including human agreement. Third, human vessels are granted the same priority response times as elder race vessels for all emergency services. She continued listing terms. Fair terms. Reasonable terms. Terms that simply asked for humans to be treated the same as the elder races. But coming after a military demonstration, these reasonable requests had the weight of demands. And finally, So Young said, humanity requires permanent seats on the Assembly Central Council and military command structure. That caused noise in the chamber. The Central Council had only 5 permanent seats, held by the founding elder races. Adding humanity would change the power structure that had existed for 3,000 years. That is a significant request, Vex said carefully. It's not a request, So Young corrected. It's a requirement for humanity to return to Policy 1, otherwise we remain at Policy Last indefinitely. The threat was clear. Stay at war mode forever? Keep the weapons active. Keep the military deployed. Force every species to live with the knowledge that humanity could strike anywhere, anytime, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The vote happened within hours. Every requirement passed. The elder races voted yes immediately. Nobody wanted to be the one to keep humanity angry. The Vakresh abstained, which was as close to yes as they could manage without completely humiliating themselves. Humanity was given 2 permanent seats on the Central Council. Ambassador So Young would hold one. The other went to Ambassador Taemin Yoon, who had been quietly building relationships with younger species for years. Together, they would make sure humanity's voice couldn't be ignored again. On the Eternal Olive Branch, Captain Han Wu received new orders from Earth Command. Return to standard operations. Stand down from combat alert. Reconfigure the ship for diplomatic duties. He looked at the orders for a long time before starting the sequence. Beginning transition back to Policy 1, he told his crew. All weapons to standby mode. Restore civilian configuration. Change running lights from red to blue. Wu watched the ship transform back into its peaceful appearance. White hull instead of gray. Friendly blue lights instead of threatening red. Weapons retracting behind panels. Within an hour, the Eternal Olive Branch looked like a diplomatic vessel again. But everyone who saw it would remember what it really was. They would know what hid beneath that friendly exterior. Do you think we'll have to do this again? Jiwoo asked. Hyan-Woo looked at the tactical display showing human forces withdrawing from Tanis, returning Vakresh prisoners. Powering down weapons. Going back to being the friendly, helpful humans that everyone expected. I hope not, he said. But if we do, at least now they know we can. In the Tanis system, Governor Taeyong Choi stood in his office again. The bruise on his face was healing. Outside his window, colonists were returning to their homes. Children played in the parks again, their laughter bright and clear. Overhead, human warships maintained orbit. Not hidden anymore. A clear reminder that this colony was protected. Commander Donghyan's outpost returned to normal operations. The massive weapon systems were powered down but not hidden. Everyone knew they were there now. The Vakresh knew. The Assembly knew. Every species that might think about pushing humanity around knew that human colonies weren't defenseless farms. They were fortresses that had chosen to grow food instead of ammunition. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Seung-min Bae filed his report. Protocol Last had been executed perfectly. All objectives achieved. 0 casualties on either side. The hidden fleet had performed exactly as designed. He recommended keeping them on ready status, but returning to civilian covers. At the bottom of his report, he added one line. Recommend permanent retention of Protocol Last as deterrent. Hope never needed again, but assume will be necessary eventually. Because that was the truth humanity understood. This wouldn't be the last time. The galaxy had been running on certain rules for 3,000 years. Rules made by the elder races for the elder races. Changing those rules would take time. There would be other tests. Other species pushing boundaries. other moments when humanity would have to choose between policy one and policy last dot, but now the choice would be different. Now everyone knew what happened when humanity stopped being polite. They had witnessed it. They had seen a species transform from peaceful farmers and friendly diplomats into an unstoppable military force, and then transform back again without losing their humanity. That was what scared the elder races most. Not that humans could fight. Lots of species could fight, but humans could fight without becoming monsters. They could unleash overwhelming violence and still show mercy. They could win decisively without cruelty. They were dangerous not because they were violent, but because they could control their violence. 3 months later, Ambassador So Young sat in a regular assembly session. They were debating trade regulations. A boring topic, but important. The Vakresh representative, that new one named Thesh, was arguing for something that would hurt human trade routes. Nothing major? Just enough to be annoying. So Young listened patiently. She took notes. When it was her turn to speak, she calmly presented counter-arguments with facts and logic. She suggested a compromise that would benefit everyone. She smiled politely when other delegates supported the Vakresh position. Policy 1 was active again. Humanity was being polite, but something was different now. When So Young spoke, people listened. When she suggested compromises, they were taken seriously. When she said something was unacceptable, it didn't happen. The Vakresh representative didn't laugh at her. The Shardmine Collective didn't make jokes about strongly worded letters. The elder races didn't treat her like a naive child because they all remembered the red pin. They all remembered policy last. They all knew that humanity's politeness was a choice, and choices could be unmade. After the session, So Young returned to her quarters. She looked at the small box on her desk. Inside was the red earth pin, the symbol of policy last. She had worn it for 72 hours. Now it was back in its box, stored away. Hopefully forever. Probably not. Junior diplomat Yuna Kang knocked on her door. The young woman looked nervous. Ambassador, may I ask a question? Of course. Do you think they learned? The assembly, do you think they'll remember? So Young looked out at the stars.